order the action session for Indianapolis Public Schools Board of School Commissioners for Tuesday, January 27th, 2015. Tonight, the colors are presented and posted by the Christmas Addicts Medical Magnet High School Tiger Battalion Junior Reserve Officers Color Guard. The team is commanded by Cadet Second Lieutenant Jalen Sloan. His team members are Cadet Master Sergeant Matthew Mitchell, Cadet First Sergeant Malik Sturdivant, Cadet Captain Diego Reyes, Cadet Sergeant Major Kendall Davis, Cadet Sergeant First Class Shania Kelso.
Ma'am, Christmas Addicts Medical Magnet Tiger Battalion Color Guard Professor Wilson present and post the color. Thank you, ma'am. We all please stand for the presentation of colors. Color guard, attention, carry, color, footwork, march. Mark time, march. Colors, up. Color the birds, march. Colors, up. Present, arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Order, color. Outward, face. Footward, march. Colors, halt. Prepare to post. Post. Present, arm. Order, arm. Footward, march. Ma'am, the colors have been posted.
Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Bentley,
Here.
Commissioner Hannan,
Here.
Commissioner Odle,
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan,
Here.
Commissioner Cosby,
Here.
Commissioner Eccles,
Here.
President Arnold.
Here. We will now move to adoption of the agenda. Does anyone have any issues or needed changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we will accept the agenda by consensus. We will now move into special recognitions, and I will ask Secretary Eccles to read our presentations tonight.
This evening, we would like to honor parents and community members who have dedicated many hours and resources to ensure that Indianapolis Public School students have a successful and rewarding experience in school. Miss Allison Knowles is a read-up volunteer tutor through the United Way of Central Indiana. Most volunteers schedule 1 hour per week to work one-on-one with a student to enhance their reading skills through comprehension, fluency, or phonemic awareness. Students at Lewis B. Russell Jr. Elementary School number 48 are extremely fortunate to be able to work with Mrs. Knowles, who has proven to go above and beyond by working with 3 students one-on-one 3 days per week. As an addition to the Lewis B. Russell family, she introduced a new program, Russell Readers Fired Up for Reading Carnival, and shared with students her personal giant Scrabble board. Students had 1 minute to come up with as many words as possible. Students were able to enjoy a fun game while challenging their minds, making them more prepared for reading. Ms. Knowles' dedication is incredible, and her service to the students and staff to Lewis B. Russell School is nothing short of remarkable. She is the epitome of giving back to our community, and the board would like to thank Ms. Knowles personally for her tireless engagement and service to her students and staff. Ms. Knowles, please come forward. We can at least give her a round of applause, please. Our second award goes to Ms. Nicole Service. She is a dedicated volunteer to Christian Park Elementary School number 82. Ms. Service faithfully volunteers for many hours each week in the morning, working with 4th grade students, engaging them in math, facts, and vocabulary. Students are elated and excited to work with Ms. Service, and staff welcome her assistance. Ms. Service is a very positive and upbeat mentor to the students and staff alike. She is a very valuable and considered to be an incredible asset to the Christian Park Elementary School. Ms. Service, please come forward and allow the board to recognize you for your tireless efforts. If we can give her a round of applause. Our last award goes to Miss Summer Helton, who regularly volunteers at Paul Miller School number 114. As a parent, she attends monthly community council meetings whenever she is needed. The students and staff frequently find her assisting with book fairs, health fairs, and parent workshops, as well as serving in classrooms. Very rarely are parents able to volunteer in schools, and it is such a warm welcome to have such a dedicated parent work so closely and warmly with students and staff alike. Having a parent in the classroom is encouraging, not to just the volunteers, but to the children and the entire student body. Mrs. Helton, thank you for your service to Paul Miller School. Please come forward so the board can formally thank you and recognize your dedication. Here. So I misspoke when I said last. I thought I only had 2 sheets of paper in front of me. So we actually do have one more, and that's Miss Patricia Edwards, who serves the students and staff of Shortridge Magnet High School for Law and Public Policy. Miss Edwards is the type of parent who not only goes above and beyond her own child's success, but does so for all the students in the Life Skills program as well. At the beginning of the school year, she sends in generous donation of supplies for classrooms to share. Miss Edwards drives to numerous stores to find outstanding deals in order to maximize the amount of supplies she is able to donate. She might be a couponer, it sounds like to me. At the holidays, she sends in snacks and crafts for each classroom. Last year, Miss Edwards noticed that her son's life skills instructor had many students that need to be spoon-fed, which can require and can be quite messy. Miss Edwards had crafted numerous bibs for towels and shirts that were age-appropriate for student-specific needs. Every week, she sends, either personally or through her son, bags of donations to share with students and staff. Miss Edwards holds a night job through FedEx, but dedicates her days to the students and staff of Shortridge. Miss Edwards, please come forward and allow the board to formally recognize your tireless efforts for our students and staff. The board is grateful to have so many dedicated parent and community volunteers. please join the board in recognizing their complete and total dedication to the Indianapolis Public Schools. Their assistance and selfless giving is beyond measure. So, final clap.
And next, we will move to student performances. Tonight, we have the Super School Middle School Choir from School 19 is our entertainment for the evening. This non-audition choir involves students in 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. Last year, they performed the national anthem for an Indiana ice hockey game, and in September, they were featured during a ceremony where School 19 received national recognition. They have worked with Mr. Josh Petty from the Indianapolis Children's Choir and Dr. Eric Stark from Butler University and the Indianapolis Symphonic Choir. The choir is conducted by Aaron Quant. Please welcome the Super School Middle School Choir from School 19.
Thank
Let's give them one more round of applause. Now we will move into the delegation portion of our meeting. I will just explain how the process works. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. We ask that we have a timer. The timer goes off. We ask that you wrap up your comments. We're not going to shut you off, but we'd appreciate it if you would finish up when you hear the buzzer. And we will not be having a dialogue, so the board or the superintendent will not be answering if you have any questions. Also, if you have any written comments, if you would give those to board, someone on the end of the board, we will make sure all of the board members get those. So tonight, our first speaker is Mr. Kim Brand, representing 3D Parts Manufacturing regarding a partnership with Career and Technical Center and Harshman Magnet. Would you like to come forward?
Well, thank you very much for making time for me tonight. I just wanted to come by and say we've made about $1.5 million investment in 3D printing equipment near Tech High School. And I'm pleased to say that my father graduated from Tech High School in 1947, and it's been my honor to get to know some people there, in particular Ben Carter, who's in charge of that program. We plan to make a $60,000 investment at Tech in the Morgan Hall building to put in what I guess used to be called a shop class. But today we call it advanced manufacturing, a maker space, and we'll be putting in 3D printers, and laser cutters, and modern technology like microcontrollers. It's our plan to connect formal and informal learning, to put hands-on learning back in the classroom. And we're looking forward to making Tech an iconic school again, like it was when my dad went there. If there's any questions, I know you'll reach out to me, but I'm really looking forward to the opportunity to being involved with Tech and with IPS.
Thank you
Thank you.
for your dedication. Thank you. Our second speaker is Ms. Elvia Felice. Felice. Oh, well, I'm sorry, I don't have it right. Representing self and Arsenal Technical High School staff regarding administrative issues at Arsenal Technical High School.
My name is Elvia Solis. I'm a science teacher at Arsenal Technical High School. And even though I haven't been there that long, I was there 3 years before our current principal, Mr. Yarrell, arrived. Throughout the time, I've seen many changes at Tech. And you need to realize Tech is a unique environment. It's a high school on what should be a college campus in many cases. And that brings many challenges to our staff and students. Our students come to school for stability and security. And in my career, I have learned that if I am going to be absent, I must prepare my students. If I want them to cooperate with the substitute teacher, I prepare them, I let them know I'm going to be out, why I'm going to be out, things like that. Changes in our schedule, the teacher, the staff, administration, coaches, 2-hour delays, closing the school early, just all of a sudden saying no after school, just throws our kids in an uproar because it upsets them. They're frustrated and they act out. This is something I've seen time and time again. There was a year when Shortridge and Crispus Attucks and Broad Ripple, their magnet programs, sent kids back to Tech because they weren't performing like they wanted them to. They had D's and F's and things like that, or maybe too many absences, and they sent them back to us. It was a very rough second semester. The kids who were coming to us were upset, and it took them a while before they finally realized that, you know, okay, you had to leave that school, you didn't want to leave it, but we'll make you part of our family. And they eventually, we were able to turn them around, convince them we cared, and took care of them. During this time, I've seen Mr. Yarrell, who first
Ms.
came to
Solis,
us.
I just need to tell you that you can't use specific names.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyway, our principal's been challenged by students, and we've had, but as they were challenged in the beginning, they have slowly overcome this, and now they're cooperating with our principal. We had assistant principals brought in who actually didn't have much of a problem because they already knew the students. So a lot of the familiarity has helped us, and I believe our culture is changing, and our students are accepting the staff and the administrators as a family and working together. We're stable, and I believe that's actually what's helped us doing some improvement. Yeah, we have a D. We still have a D, but we went from a 1.5 to a 1.85, and generally that's considered a C minus, but the state doesn't give C minuses. Dr. Farabee, you did state that you were looking for growth, and we're trying to show that we have grown, and we believe this because our principal and staff are there supporting us. We're worried that with the new year, if we have major administrative changes, that's going to cause some problems. Our students will be upset. We already know that we're getting new students because of the issues with Shortridge changing the public policy coming to tech and things like that. We know those students are upset. And when you have upset students going to a different school, things don't mesh well. Okay. I'm just hoping that you take some of this into consideration so that we can keep a stable environment and have a good start for next year. I have copies, and I also have letters from a substitute teacher and a math teacher who could not be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next delegate is Mr. Michael Dwyer, representing himself and Arsenal Technical High School staff regarding concerns with administrative changes at Arsenal Technical High School. Mr. Dwyer, and just again, I want to remind you, you cannot use specific names of employees
Yes, ma'am.
in your comments.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Mike Dwyer, and I'm speaking on behalf of the foreign language teachers at Arsenal Tech High School. For the last several years, our school has made gradual but constant improvements under difficult circumstances. But now it appears that our administrators are about to be replaced by administrators from schools that may not be demonstrating equal growth that we are. Many of our teaching colleagues have shared with me their worries that by changing horses while we are in midstream, we might be squandering our hard-earned gains and destabilize our school to the point where we could even be forced into a takeover by for-profit corporate charter schools. Teachers worry that with several charter schools now slated for closing due to chronic underperformance, the ensuing chaos of readmitting these students back into IPS would only increase instability and cause deeper educational problems at a time when we were already on the road to improvement. With significant gains in growth of school improvement scores, for example, the last 3 years from 1.5 up to 1.85, I have to ask you, who do we have to thank for our constant improvements? Our principal, an alumni of Tech, has been competently guiding our ship to safer harbors while constantly repairing the damages of battles and insightfully training his crew to be more efficient. He diligently thinks of the well-being of both students and teachers before himself and has been critical to our continual school improvements. I don't know anyone else whom students can both relate to so well and at the same time lead with command and respect. Our vice principal is the single most helpful and supportive administrator I've ever had the pleasure of working under in the last 14 years. He's dedicated and has been serving Tech since some of our teachers were students themselves in IPS. He truly understands the challenges that teachers face and knows how to implement new reforms in a way that will have the greatest chance of having a positive impact and success. There are countless times where he would even gladly sacrifice his own lunchtime to help others in their time of need. Our administration is both dedicated and an effective team that have enabled improvements at Tech, even under these challenging circumstances. They are proactive rather than reactive. They have been consistent with discipline, created a safe and productive environment, and actively participate in many school activities like musicals, plays, and sporting events. I implore you, please consider retaining our valued administrators and enable us to continue our improvements with stability and consistency. Our teaching passions are strong, and our desire to see a continuance of our improvements is intense. We believe that our administrators are highly qualified for the individual challenges that we face at our school, and they are doing an outstanding job at ensuring a quality educational environment. Our students and staff are more than just numbers and data. By retaining Arsenal Tech High School's administrators, you would at the same time also be upholding IPS's primary stated objective. This is to put students first. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next delegate is Mr. Andrew Poley, representing self and Arsenal Technical High School staff regarding administrative changes proposed for 2015-2016.
Board members and colleagues, in 2011, I was a scared IUPUI School of Education student teacher walking onto the Arsenal Tech campus for the very first time. Despite my military experience, I was not prepared for our principal. He is part drill sergeant and part teddy bear, and loud enough to be a real bear. He was instrumental in helping me to obtain a position at Tech. Through his consistent attentiveness to his staff and personal attention, he helped me understand that I was called to be a public high school teacher. The more I talk to students, their parents, and colleagues, the more I am absolutely sure that Tech is where I was supposed to be. He saw something in me. He gave me a chance and encouraged me. I owe my career to him. Now, unfortunately, that is a career that is threatened. Outside influences are threatening the foundation of public schools in Indianapolis in the name of reform. Accountability is the banner they fly, and they wield data like the sword of Damocles. We are living a dystopic novel. Teachers in this district work in a culture of fear and intimidation, and that is not hyperbole. Our jobs have been threatened. We have been shuffled from school to school. Some have been forced to abandon IPS in search of more stable pastures. Our principal and the administrative staff have actually been the sole element of stability in the sea of chaos. He reminds us of our love for the students. He focuses on the positive and encourages his staff to focus on our mission, to put the students first. He makes us stay. He is the critical element holding Tech together and helping it to improve every year. Without him, there is no Tech. He is the heart of the school and the captain it needs to bring the school to success. We have improved our school scores in every year he has been with us. The culture of the school has improved every year. The students are engaged in their success more and more each year. Under his guidance, we have instituted procedures to help prepare the students for success. He has developed programs that unite the entire school each Tuesday to help focus on literacy, which is a continued problem for our students. He encourages staff collaboration by having teachers lead staff development with skills and strategies that were defined by us as areas that we needed help in. He encourages teachers to buy into his ideas, and when it inevitably becomes difficult to fight the onslaught of educational apathy that we face each day, he uses that booming presence to push us on to our goals. In short, the academic shortfalls of Arsenal Tech are not the fault of our administrative staff. For the past year and a half, I've been teaching 11th and 12th grade English Strat Labs or ECA prep. From the data I have seen, the single biggest contributing factor to our D grade has been the failing English ECA scores. It is my job to raise the test scores of these students that have already failed the test once, at least. If I had done my job more effectively, we may not be having this conversation. So let blame go where it belongs. If you're going to fire anyone, let it be me. I am accountable. The administrative staff were not the ones in the classroom responsible for test scores. That was me. Let those who make such a huge difference in the lives of students and teachers continue to do that work. If there's a place for me in IPS, I will be glad to have it. But don't let such wonderful educators pay for my inexperience and inadequacies. The administrative team currently in place at Tech is a cohesive family. They have their flaws, but you cannot count professional negligence or ineptitude among them. In the next phase of my career, whether it be IPS or elsewhere, it is my solemn prayer that I'm able to work with such wonderful, caring, and devoted educators. Thank you.
Our final delegate this evening is Ms. Eugenia Murray, representing IPS parents regarding Innovation Schools.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Eugenia Murray. I am an IPS parent of 3 children who are preparing to enter junior high school within the next several years. It is extremely important that my children and I have access to high-quality educational options as they enter their next essential phase in schooling. That is why I'm here tonight, supporting an innovative school concept at the elementary school level, so that parents with younger children can also have options. All children have the right to benefit from high-quality education, regardless of their socioeconomic and demographic backgrounds. The need for high-quality education and learning is tremendous in our IPS district. Sadly, though, these needs go unmet for far too many of our IPS students. It is clearly evident when 2/3 of our IPS schools are D or F rated. Failure should no longer be an option. Change, option, and choices are needed immediately. I've had the opportunity to read information regarding the Innovation Network School and to learn more about the failing leadership academies. It was exciting to learn how their school models focus on high exceptional educators, daily enrichment, rigorous evaluations, partnerships with parents, accountability, and a wide range of positive implementation tools. As an engaged parent, I've always maintained that success for our children is ultimately a collaborative effort, with students motivated by hard work and achievement, quality teachers and administrators, and continuous parental involvement. All 3 greatly align with the proposed Innovation Network School. The need for this turnaround model has never been greater in our struggling IPS district. Please vote in favor of the Innovation Network School. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to thank all of our delegates. It's a difficult job to come here, and it's very important for the board to hear your voice. So thank you for your time and your interest in our children. We will now be moving into 2.04 information legislative update. And as I told you last week, we're making some changes in the format of our meetings, but we're not quite there. And so tonight is technically an action session where we are voting on recommendations and issues that we spoke about at the briefing session. But there's a few items that we're not quite sure how to fit them in, and so you might see some changes moving forward as it relates to how information is relayed both to the board members and to the public. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Farabee.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, Madam President. Item 2.04, as previously shared, is an information item. Tonight, we're sharing an update on our legislative agenda, which includes what has recently taken place and next step. At an upcoming board session, I would like to gain the board's perspective on how commissioners might support legislative advocacy. I'd also like for us to discuss a process to share timely legislative updates as well. This evening, Figueroa Baker's Daniel team will be facilitating the presentation. Joe Smith will take the lead in the presentation. I'll turn it over to the team at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Farabee. Madam President and members of the board, we wanted to just give you an update on what we've talked about with Dr. Farabee and what we hope you will approve and trust us in the agenda for the legislative session for 2015 for IPS. So if everything works out, I'll be clicking and we'll talk and get you through the process quickly. If you would see, the main thing we want to talk about is kind of what we're going to go through this evening, which is the overview for 2015, our legislative agenda, and then legislation that we think is important or vital for you guys to be mindful of, and then talk to you just briefly about next steps and how we'll implement this and hopefully take the agenda forward in a positive way. The key dates or timeline that we want you to be mindful of is that as it starts, if you all know that in January, early January, the legislative session started. February 25th is an important date because that is the date where legislation will go from one chamber, meaning from the House to the Senate or from the Senate to the House. So that's a key day for, I'm sorry, February 25th is the last day for bills to be filed, and then the crossover date will be the 2nd of March, where bills will transfer from one chamber to the other. And then we go into April 15th, which will be the last day for the second chamber to take their action on the bill or legislation that's presented to them. And then end of the month, we will conclude with sine die, and that's when you'll know, affirmatively what the legislation is on behalf of our agenda and others that proceed with the legislative agendas. So what we're going to go through for you is that these are the 4 main areas that we feel are vital for IPS and the legislative agenda. The first is the providing adequate funding, which you all are aware of, the complexity index and the funding that comes from state to IPS and local school corporations. We will talk briefly then. That's probably the most important and vital piece of information for you guys to know about. Libby will take the lead on discussing that with you. Then we'll go into additional funding for what we find as being a high level of importance is for adequate funding for preschool, support legislation that preserves neighborhood schools, meaning those that are traditional IPS schools and current IPS schools, preserving that and what we provide for students in our school district and how we want to preserve that. And then another last agenda item is the notice for teachers and their resignation, so that does not put IPS in a negative situation when they're moving forward with providing services and teaching opportunities and providing services from teaching to the students. So with that, we'll go first in adequate funding, and I'm going to let Libby take the lead on this. She's the guru on numbers, and we'll explain to you kind of how we're going forward with funding and what we feel is important versus the complexity index and the state funding.
Thank you, Joe. I'm Libby Searsniak from Faegre, Baker, and Daniels. When Governor Pence said that 2015 was going to be an education session, he really hit the nail on the head. There have been 1,200 bills filed, and of that, 15% are bills that actually could have an impact on IPS. More than 180 pieces of legislation, but probably the most important piece of legislation, and the one that all school districts are watching, is the biennial budget. And it's particularly critical for schools this year because as the state has begun to emerge from the recession and look at additional funding, legislators are considering very seriously how they can narrow the funding gap between the highest funded school districts and the lowest funded school districts. And I thought, just to illustrate what we're talking about, it might be helpful, and I apologize for the small print, to show you the funding and the free and reduced lunch rates for the 10 or 20 highest per pupil funding districts and 20 lowest. And when I say districts, that includes charter schools. They are treated as school districts. And actually, because of their high poverty rates, 18 of the 20 highest funded school districts are actually charter schools. And there is a $3,000 gap between the highest funded and the lowest funded district. There's no dispute that the lowest funded districts need additional resources, but there is also, as you'll see, the highest funded school has 9 times the poverty rate as the lowest funded district, and there's clearly a need for resources to serve the children in the highest funded district. The school funding formula and, obviously just the basics, and what we were talking about on the previous page was per pupil tuition support, which consists of something that's called a foundation, a base amount that every school district gets, times the complexity index. Every school district has a complexity index. It's based on the percentage of children who are eligible for free and reduced lunch who attend that school. As the gap has widened, a group of the generally high-performing, low-poverty school districts formed an informal coalition this summer called the Fix It Coalition, asking for legislators to fix the school funding formula to narrow the gap between the high and low-funded school districts. There's a lot of different ways this could be accomplished, but inevitably, one thing that's being considered and that is particular concern to IPS is changing the funding formula so there is less funding going to high poverty districts. That is, instead of making it a bigger pie, slicing the pie in a different way. Oops. I think it's important. Let me see here. I think it's important to note that, I don't know if I'm doing this right. There we go. It's important to note that the legislature has already been moving forward with narrowing the gap between the highest funded and the lowest funded districts. I think the problem is they've done more to reduce funding to lower or to the highest funded districts than they have been to bolster funding to the lowest funded districts. And IPS is a good example of this. Over the past 5 years, IPS's per pupil funding has been reduced by $1,000 per pupil, more than $1,000, as a result of changes to the complexity index, as well as IPS coming down to the foundation amount. At the same time, the district's general fund budget has been reduced by roughly 24%. So there has been significant reductions in IPS's level of funding over this period, which is why the next point, complexity index funding is absolutely critical in filling the gap, because at the same time the per pupil funding has been reduced. Additional funding that all school districts receive for special education services, for English language learner services, for textbooks, these have been essentially flatlined. And in IPS's case, last year, state and federal special education funding only made up 61%. It only covered 61% of IPS's cost. State and federal ELL funding only covered 9% of IPS's cost. This was a $27 million funding gap that IPS needed to use the complexity index dollars to help fill. So what Joe and I have been doing at the legislature is educating legislators about how the complexity index is used, debunking some myths, such as IPS's funding has remained the same for decades. You know, we've even heard things like IPS hasn't closed a single school building since it, you know, had 100,000 kids. So a lot of it is an education process. I believe most school districts think the entire formula needs to be infused with additional dollars to provide adequate funding for all children. And we'll see if that what happens when the House Ways and Means unveils the first take of the state budget in about 2 weeks.
Thank you, Libby. The next on the agenda item is the second of the 4 major listings of agendas, and this will be the preschool. And this is not a proactive piece of legislation. This is more of a proactive belief of IPS and what we want to support if it comes to fruition in the legislative process, and just advocate and let them know that these are things that we believe are important to the children that we serve and moving forward. And that will be basically funding for preschool in as aggressive of a position that it can be. Currently, IPS is serving about over 800 students through the preschool system. That is about 1/3 of those that are in the kindergarten process currently. That is only funded through monies that you put towards that are not allocated from a state funding perspective, but those monies that you guys take from your Title I funding and put towards education in the preschool level. There are about, I think we approximate about 3,000 that could qualify for this level of teaching, and we would like to support and advocate for that legislative process that we think is important, vital, and that they should support that. The pilot program that was presented by the governor last year and is going to continue some going forward, but we need them to make it a more robust funding, and we want to advocate for that. There also is the Indianapolis Fund, which is the City One Indy preschool proposal. We have kind of mixed reviews on how that's been productive or not been productive. We want to advocate that allowing us to put money towards the IPS programs will make a more robust, productive product for the students that will be available to that preschool learning. Next is basically, to go quickly, the third would be neighborhood schools. I think what's important, we have a list of about 5 bills that we think are like high level that we'll show you later, but one of those is 1638, and that goes to Representative Boehning's bill, which is, if you all are, I'm sure, aware of the fact that it expands kind of the grade levels for K through 6. It is where they're talking about more of a takeover program, not just of schools that qualify for takeover, but for the feeder schools that feed into these schools, whether they are deemed to be a high level A, B, or C, or a lower level D or F, that they could basically qualify for being brought into these takeover schools as a feeder school system. We are opposed to that and don't wish that to take place, but we're working with those that are involved in the discussions to see if we can come to a reasonable solution to make sure that we are protecting the value of the students that are in our system currently and making sure they're not brought in indirectly or not correctly into a feeder school system for a non-IPS school. The next and last would be the 30-day notice. One of the things that IPS encounters on an annual basis are teachers that in the very last stages before the school system starts in a particular district is to say that they are moving on to a different school corporation and thus leaving the school in a little bit of a bind by not giving proper notice to the school system that they are no longer going to be an employee. We currently, what the issue is that legislation is not very clear. As it reads currently, it's kind of a gray area where we don't know if it starts from the notice being required for a day where they are actually signing a contract for a new school corporation or the day for the start day. In addition to that, we have the issue of being a full or calendar balanced school program. So we need to clarify that so that we are not left in a bind from IPS school system to say that when teachers are not available, we need to have proper notice to make sure that the children are being properly educated by the teachers qualified to provide these services. So those are the 4 areas that we want to cover. And then we're going to go through quickly some proposed bills that we think are basically, or we would say, is a very high level of importance for us. Of course, as Libby alluded to, which is probably the most prominent aspect, is 1001, which is the budget, which gets at the complexity index and talks about the funding from the state to all of the school corporations across the state of Indiana. That is probably primary legislation number 1. 1009 is Freedom to Teach, which is a bill by Representative Boehning that institutes grants and programs for schools. There's probably, as you become aware of in the near future, there will be opportunities for teachers. There will be an amendment made that will talk about teachers implementing programs, or schools rather, implementing programs for teachers that are of high success, that want to be in a cadre of folks that want to take advanced steps to pool their resources, pool their knowledge, and be on a higher pay scale to implement different pools and different concepts to making children more accessible to learning, and I would say more of a high level of a teacher and qualification. The next would be Senate Bill 566, which is Senator Mishler's bill, which is taking 1321, which you're aware of from last year's legislative services, and making it more of a global or statewide application that will not directly, I think, put the restraints that IPS currently has put upon itself through 1321, but expands a little bit more. We're in the process of talking to Senator Mishler and other legislators in the Senate as well as the House to see how we can make that more amenable to us and acceptable to you as a board. The last 2 that we thought are high level are 1638, which is Representative Boehning's bill, which we talked about earlier, which is basically the transformation zones and allows for kind of the feeder schools to be brought into the new transformation schools if it is approved by the state board, Department of Education board. So that is what we talked about earlier. That's something we'll be watching. And lastly, 1028, which is a Wendy McNamara piece of legislation, which is probably more beneficial to us, allowing us to use capital project funds and transfers for expenses that we currently incur in the form of utilities and other expenses that we could take off the books and put and use these fundings for that particular purpose. So to be quickly moving along, what we perceive to be the most important for us as far as next steps is Dr. Farabee, and not to bring too much glory to it, but Dr. Farabee is very well received among the legislative folks as far as his demeanor, his intellect, his understanding of the process of IPS and what it does moving forward. He has met with a multitude of folks from the legislative fiscal body, as well as the leaders in education, which will be your, when we say about fiscal, the Ways and Means. So Representative Porter, Representative Doc Brown, as we will call him, Representative Baining on the education side, Senator Kinley, and those are the fiscal leaders, to name a few. He has met with them already. We are continuing to meet with them on a regular basis to update them on what our particular needs are, staying in line with the 4 agenda items, and also saying how we can be of benefit to them as far as educating them, enlightening them on the things and issues that we have before us and how we can work together to be successful this legislative session. We will, as you see, I think Libby alluded to earlier, we will have an actual hearing on the budget, and we will present on behalf of IPS and let them know the kind of wants and needs that we have and how we can be supportive to them and how they can be supportive to us monetarily to make sure we can still be a benefit to the children that we serve. And last but not least, we will serve like kind of a legislative event to educate them on a global sense where we invite the legislators that are actually affected by IPS, those that touch us, meaning inside Center Township areas, as well as those in the township areas that touch a part of Center Township and the IPS district. So we will continue to educate them, keep them informed, and we will report to you guys as you see needed to make sure you're apprised of what we're doing and how we're progressing. So I think that covers all. And maybe anything else to share, Dr. Farabee, Madam President?
Let's get out just to remind commissioners that next step at our upcoming session, I would like to gain the board's perspective on how commissioners might be supportive of our legislative advocacy. I also would like for us to discuss a process to share timely legislative updates as shared this evening. It is moving rather fast. There are a lot of bills and legislation being proposed for education. I want to ensure that you have that timely information for us to discuss.
Commissioner Odom?
Just going back to the numbers that compare the funding for the different school districts, does that funding include the complexity index?
Yes, it includes just the foundation and the complexity index. It doesn't include special ed, doesn't include any federal money or local property tax money. It includes and it's really the only way to compare districts on an apples-to-apples basis because it's the only funding that is awarded on a head count for every child that's in the school district.
And then on the preschool, do we have a specific number, that we're going to ask for? I mean, do we know the number of kids in the ideal situation, the number of kids that we need preschool seats for? And is there a specific number attached to that? So when somebody says, well, how much does IPS want for preschool?
We don't have a specific number. What we would be asking for is just proper funding for those students. Currently, as we said in the slide, we have about 800 students currently. We probably have a base of about 3,000 that we could afford services to or qualify for services. So we don't have a per pupil amount that we want to ask for. We're asking for just whatever the legislative body is willing to put towards that service, we'll be willing to support and ask for.
Ideally, we would like to have, as a starting point, full funding for kindergarten, which would create a pool of dollars that we could repurpose for preschool. And also, we'd like to receive some funding for preschool to supplement the dollars that we've already purposed towards preschool. Again, we're hopeful that we'll have positive results from the city's proposal, which would be a matching situation that we will receive matching dollars for what we've already committed to preschool, and also any capital updates that would need to be made to be on track for paths to quality. And again, we're in compliance with implementation of the governor's pilot as well. But again, we have a ways to go to get where we would like to be.
Commissioner Bentley?
I just had would it be possible, because I know things move really, really quickly. I mean, in lieu of trying to meet to get updates all the time, because we won't be able to do that, would it be possible to get a weekly report, legislative update? I know in the past those had been done on a pretty regular basis, and it made it easy to stay on top of things. I don't know if that's possible to get that from the team.
Yeah, I suggest that, as I mentioned earlier, that that's something that we discuss to make sure that we have a process, that we have consensus on how we'd like that information to be shared. I think we've used a multitude of means in the past. We want to make sure that it's information that's timely and also it's information that's helpful to the administration and commissioners.
You have a comment? Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item is item 2.05. Again, a point of clarification, that is not a action item. However, the administration is seeking consensus on a board endorsement to continue conversations with Charter School USA on a potential partnership at the state level. This will be a discussion item at the upcoming February State Board of Education meeting next week. You have in your materials the latest proposal document that we received from Charter USA. I'll also remind commissioners this was a discussion item at our academic briefing. You also recall in the presentation on the legislative update, there is proposed legislation that would legislate expansion of feeder schools for our current takeover schools. However, the president for Charter USA has expressed an interest to enter in some type of agreement, potentially through Public Law 1321 or some other means, and the State Board of Education as a means for ensuring that there's a proper transition for our takeover schools, and also ensure that we're addressing some of the issues there. So again, this is what we've received from Charter Schools USA at this point. Again, we're seeking consensus for board endorsement to move forward with further conversation.
Comments or questions? Commissioner Cosby?
I have a two-part question. First, Dr. Fairby, what do you see as being the benefit of IPS in this arrangement? And then secondly, can you outline in more detail what the process would be for that building returning to IPS? Is that still the end game? Is this a transitional plan or what?
So the benefit is what you just described, you're spot on, is that this would start the transition process for the facilities to transition to IPS authority. This would also, again, provide an opportunity for those students to be counted as IPS students, and the school would be considered an IPS school, very similar to the transition that is in process for Arlington. So that would be a benefit to the district. We also believe that the recommendation of administration that this is a better approach versus trying to legislate and debate with our legislators on whether or not the State Board of Education should be given the authority to expand the takeover effort to K-6 for those schools currently under that intervention. So again, this is something that we believe is somewhat of a compromise between where we might go.
Commissioner Odle?
I support this because I think it brings all of these students back into IPS, basically makes these schools, the school that has been taken over, an IPS school again. The only difference is instead of us selecting a principal who would select the teachers, we're selecting Charter USA to operate the school for us. But for all everything else about the school will be an IPS school, and I think it hopefully will help accelerate the performance of this school to be one of our A schools.
Dr. Farabee, have we selected which elementary schools would be those feeder schools?
We have not. Again, we are seeking board consensus on endorsement to move forward with further conversation. This is the proposal that we received to date. And again, this will be an agenda item at the State Board of Education meeting next week. This is also a request from the State Board of Education as an opportunity to think differently about this intervention. It's also important to note that there, in this proposal, would be metrics of performance that would need to be met and to ensure that this type of arrangement would continue, which is something very different than what is currently in play, because all of that reporting and responsibility goes to the State Board of Education and not to the district at this point.
So if I understood it correctly, we would close schools and those students would then go to Imadana as one huge elementary school?
No, this would not involve closing any schools. There's a request to have the current students at Imadana remain in the middle grades, but to begin to create a elementary feeder into Imadana that would include recruitment of students outside of IPS and targeted recruitment within IPS.
Commissioner Hannon?
I just wanted to say I'm grateful to see this prior to going to the state board, because I know in some ways we only have a certain amount of control over those schools, the schools that were taken over by the contracting organization. So I appreciate this, and I certainly endorse continuing conversations, though I'm slightly hesitant and look forward to a more formal proposal. I also want to say that I'm hopeful that moving forward in these situations and with the current legislative agenda, that we're able to articulate a clear strategy around this, because I think it's easier to think about where we're going next if we have sort of a strategy to rely on, rather than the sort of one-off, let's do this one and then let's do this one. So I just want to say that on the record, but I certainly endorse continuing conversations and don't see any reason that we can't try to compromise, especially if it means getting the students back to IPS.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes, I would just like to echo those comments that I endorse continuing the conversation. I know that there are circumstances outside of our control, and so we need to stay engaged and try to develop the best system that we're at the table developing. So would highly encourage that.
Commissioner Bentley?
I endorse moving forward with the conversations, but I do have concerns, and hopefully those concerns will get addressed as we have more conversations about it.
And I think, again, we need to have the conversation of how does that dialogue between, as we're moving forward, and the board stay engaged so that we're aware of what compromises are continuing to be made. Maybe we have to talk about the process. So, Commissioner Cosby?
I just want to say on the record that I'm really hesitant to continue forward. My main concern with this is that Charter Schools USA is one of the few, if not the only, for-profit educational institutions in the city. And I just personally, I have a big moral dilemma with creating an institution that is a for-profit institution when we're dealing with the education of kids. I don't see how someone can seek to make a profit from this as we struggle with our own budgets and things like that. I just that's a boondoggle to me, and I would prefer to not engage them. And I heard someone say, well, they have a non-for-profit arm, but our policy states that we would not enter into partnerships. Our current policy states we would not enter into partnerships with organizations that are for-profit organizations, and I just think it's a good policy.
Moving forward, it sounds like there's some consensus to continue the dialogue, but to keep the board fully engaged in progress moving forward and answering the concerns. And I would encourage commissioners, if you have concerns or issues or thoughts, make sure you get those to Dr. Farabee.
And again, the administration will not make any decisions without the board's support. We're only telling the state that we'll continue discussions and try to reach a compromise at this point.
Moving on with our agenda, 3.01, approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of our previous meeting. Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 4.01, report of the treasurer.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded that we approve the report of the treasurer. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We will now move to Section 5, General Superintendent's Recommendations, New Business. And I will turn over, these will be items we will be voting on for the audience or anyone watching at home. If it seems like we go quickly through these items, it is because we have been made aware of these items during the briefing session and had questions answered. And tonight, we will be deliberating and approving or not approving the recommendations as presented. So 5.01.
Item 5.01 is the first action item for this evening. The administration is recommending that the Board of Commissioners approve the proposed calendars for the 2015, 2016, and 2016-2017 school years as presented.
So moved?
Been moved and seconded that we approve this item. Comments or questions? Well, we're not supposed to be doing questions. Comments?
Are we doing A or B? There were two.
No, we-
Both A or?
Right, we shifted to the draft calendars A, which is the administration's recommendation.
Any other comments?
I just have a comment. You end up getting a lot of phone calls over calendars and hours of the day and that kind of thing, which I'm not discounting the concern people have, but I want to support this because it does add in, those professional development days that I think is important. But I do hope as we move into negotiations that the administration as well as the union will be able to work towards, paying people for these days and making sure that we're increasing salaries since they haven't been increased in many years.
Any other comment from commissioners? Commissioner Hannon?
I'll be supporting the calendar change. I also wanted to just reiterate what Commissioner Bentley said, as well as saying I hope that that we use this time wisely. Anyone who's taught knows that professional development at times is not the most beneficial use of time. So let's figure out how to make it used wisely and engage our teachers in actually creating what that process looks like.
Comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The next agenda item is item 5.02, which is a recommendation for the Board of Commissioners to approve the professional services agreement with Teach Plus as presented.
Move approval.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve this item. Comments from board members? Commissioner Bentley?
Well, I'm going to approve this. I think, we've got these teams in place, and the teacher leaders have been working hard this year, and, I think it's awesome that we've got this corporate support from the Lilly Corporation to do this work, and so I'm excited that we are able to provide this to some of our schools.
Commissioner Eccles?
I am in support simply for the fact that I know that teaching is difficult, and then taking on being a teacher leader is even more difficult, but we should reward them for the great work that they're doing rather than leaving the classroom. So if we can grow our teachers, I think we should do that and pay them for that as well.
Other comments? I too will be supporting the recommendation. I think this is one of many tools that we could have in our toolbox to look at. I'm hopeful that we're going to get some positive results and that we're going to continue to get feedback on improvement on these schools and then possibly replicate it at other schools. So with that, I will be approving it as well. So Commissioner Cosby?
I just wanted to state that this item's been on the agenda, I think, 3 times now.
And while I am in support in general of creating opportunities for teachers to serve in leadership roles, I'm also, I guess, more strongly in favor of IPS building their own capacity, so I will be voting no on this item.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
And I abstain.
Next agenda item is item 5.03. I recommend that the Board of Commissioners approve the Phelan Leadership Academy proposal for implementation beginning the 2015-16 school year.
So moved.
Second.
And before we have comments on this, I would ask our attorney, Hud Pfeiffer, to come forward. There was some question regarding breach of Robert's Rules of Order, and I think some research has been done. And for those that were here last week or those that might have a question, I'd like him to give us a little information on what you have discovered.
Well, in the Roberts Rules, which govern this body, there's a difference between trying to take up a motion a second time in the same meeting and doing it in a subsequent meeting. If you do it in the same meeting, then there are some special rules that apply that require and restrict who can bring it up and how it can be brought before the body. That's not what's happening here. This is a different meeting. In a different meeting, there's a different rule. It's actually Rule 38 under Robert's Rules of Order that say that when a motion that failed in a prior meeting can be renewed at a different meeting by a motion by any board member, seconded, and then acted upon in the normal course like any other motion.
Thank you, Hud.
You're welcome.
Any comments? Commissioner Cosby?
I just, have to reiterate my reasons for voting no on this. Again, I'm not against collaboration. I'm not against partnerships. My concern with this is, as I've stated before, this organization does not yet have a state letter grade. The goal of this initiative is to improve our state letter grade. So to me, it makes common sense that if we're going to seek to improve our state letter grade, that we are looking to organizations that have demonstrated with data an ability to achieve a good state letter grades. So in light of other charter schools that are facing inadequate academic performance and are being closed down, I just feel like this is a gamble that we really shouldn't take at this time. I can't gamble with our kids' education.
Other comments? Commissioner Odom?
Well, I would just say that the reason I support it is because the innovation schools is intended to accelerate the improvement of our schools. They're going to take what is an F school and what has been an F school for multiple years. So what we're doing doesn't work. So we're going to try something else. And I think that's what this board should get about, is trying something different and not letting the status quo hold us hostage.
And I will be supporting the recommendation because the whole, in my opinion, the whole concept of innovation is new ideas. I mean, the fellowships were for people to come up with new ideas and to try new schools. And although the Phelan Leadership Academies have an existing, it's new to our district. And to me, that's the premise of the idea is let's think outside the box and try some innovative ideas that will turn around some of our failing schools. So I will be supporting the recommendation. Any other comments from commissioners? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Next agenda item is item 5.04 is request to enter an agreement with the Marzano Resource Laboratory. We ask that the Board of Commissioners approve the contract as presented.
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve this item. Any comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next agenda item is item 5.05 is request of the Board of School Commissioners to approve the declaration of the following properties as surplus and no longer needed for school purposes. Upon approval of the declaration, the property may be sold or otherwise exchanged as appropriate pursuant to the provisions of Indiana law.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded that we approve this recommendation. Comments or questions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next agenda item is item 5.06, is approval of donations. I recommend that the Board of School Commissioners approve to accept the in-kind and monetary donations as listed in the attachment for a total amount of $77,906.33.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve this recommendation. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Do you want me to do 5.07? 5.07 is a uniform conflict of interest disclosure for Samuel L. Odell. And I recommend that the board approve the uniform conflict of interest disclosure statement submitted by Commissioner Samuel L. Odell.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded that we approve this recommendation. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And abstentions?
Next agenda item is item 5.08, which is approval of our drug-free community grant. I recommend that the Board of School Commissioners approve the request to accept the drug-free community grant in the amount of $16,250 for the January 1 through December 31st, 15 funding period.
So moved.
Been moved and seconded that we approve this recommendation. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next agenda item is item 5.09, which is a resolution to address weather-related closings on January 7th and 8th of 2015. I recommend that the Board of Commissioners approve resolution number 5248, authorizing the use of sick days for days missed due to emergency closing of schools.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. In comments or questions? Because this is a resolution, does it need to be a roll call vote? Okay, we will do a roll call vote because it is a resolution. Madam Secretary?
Commissioner Bentley?
Yes.
Commissioner Hannan?
Yes.
Commissioner Odell?
Yes, I think our staff deserves every dollar they can get.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yes.
Commissioner Cosby?
Yes.
Commissioner Eccles?
Yes.
President Arnold?
Yes. That concludes Section 5, General Superintendent's Recommendations for New Business. Moving to Section 6, General Superintendent's Recommendations, Business and Finance, General Resolution 6.01 to 6.05. Does any commissioner have a specific item they would like pulled out? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move we accept them all.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we accept all of Section 6. Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Section 7, General Superintendent's Recommendations, Business and Finance Other, 7.01 through 7.04.
Move approval.
Second.
Does anyone have any that they wish to consider separately? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Section 8, General Superintendent's Recommendations, Business and Finance, Sealed Bids and Other Purchasing Matters, 8.01 through 8.08. Does any commissioner have an item they would like to consider separately? If not,
So moved.
Second. Been moved and seconded that we approve all of Section 8. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Moving to Section 9, General Superintendent's Recommendations, Personnel.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the personnel reports. Comments or questions? Hearing none, all of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is there any unfinished business? Superintendent comments?
Thank you, Madam President. One brief comment this evening is really would like to thank all of our community members who participated in nominating a teacher for our Hubbard Prize Life-Changing Teacher Award. We had over 200 nominations. We're excited to digest all of that information and begin to determine who our finalists are and teachers to be recognized. As you know, teachers have an opportunity to be recognized and also receive a generous monetary award as well. So we look forward to celebrating the work of our teachers this spring as we celebrate our Hubbard Prize Life-Changing Teacher Award winners.
Commissioner comments? Commissioner Cosby?
I have a couple of comments this evening. This past week, I had the pleasure of visiting School 93, which is a Project Restore school. I was very excited to be there. The kids were thriving, seemed to be thriving in that environment. Project Restore, if you're not familiar, is a really awesome homegrown school model. They're very intent on student data. The student data is posted throughout the building, and the kids really strive. They take that very seriously, really strive to attain good test scores, and they're rewarded for those scores. So I got to see them spinning the wheel and receiving some prizes for their good test scores over there. It was a great visit. The other thing that I'd like to share with the community is that we lost one of our educational leaders in Indianapolis. Mike Sage passed away on January 17th, 2015. He was really dedicated to improving educational opportunities for kids in Indianapolis. And I just wanted to lift his name up because he has been involved with IPS since the 1970s. In 1978, he actually served as the first director of Indy Prep, which was the first alternative school in IPS schools. He stayed involved with IPS ever since that, and in 2012 he developed a community organization called ECAT, Education Community Action Team. He was all over the community. Mike planted many seeds in different people, and I just wanted to share the loss that we are experiencing, and he will be fondly remembered by the community. Thank you.
Comments? Before we adjourn, I would like to read a memorial to Linda Orban. Whereas Linda J. Orban, who died on January 19, 2015, served Indianapolis Public Schools for a total of 48 years. Whereas her years of service contributed positively and significantly to Indianapolis Public School students. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of School Commissioners of the City of Indianapolis that the death of Linda J. Orban be memorialized and that a copy of this memorial be sent to the members of her family. Linda worked at Broad Ripple High School for 26 years, serving students as a teacher and financial clerk. For the past 22 years, she worked at John Morton Feeney Center for Educational Services, most recently serving as assistant to the deputy treasurer. Linda was respected by her peers for her dedication to duties. She will be greatly missed by all. No other comments? We will stand adjourned. Our next meeting will be a briefing session on February 10th.